Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's draft week, so we got to go to the draft analyst himself, Jordan Reid at ESPN, but we also have to talk about what the Vikings are going to do. I had a chance to hang with Tony Dungy this weekend, and Matthew Slater from the Patriots, he gave me a little intel about what the Vikings might do because they've been on the phone. We'll do that and much more coming up on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson. And again, this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I want to thank everybody who is joining in, tuning in to check us out. I want to thank the everydayers that continue to download, like, share, and comment. Please comment on Instagram and Twitter. If any of our segments, any of our clips, you want to comment, and on YouTube as well. We're 24/7 on YouTube. We want to thank you guys for joining us. But again, I'm Ron Johnson. My producer, Sam Ekstrom, is going to join the show in a minute. But I want everybody to know this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any bet guaranteed. So why not bet on the Timberwolves? That's the newest one coming up tonight. Timberwolves are going to play the Suns. They probably win. So I would take the Timberwolves, maybe make some parlays in there. The Anthony Edwards goes for 30. Take that because Anthony Edwards is going to have himself another night. We know he is the next coming of Michael Jordan. But to get started, you just go to FanDuel.com/locked on. As simple as that. Make that first $5 bet and you get a guaranteed $150 in bonus bets. And then you're playing with house money. Go out there and bet. I mean, you saw the Lakers Nuggets. They want the Nuggets to win. Go bet on the Nuggets, people. That's another guaranteed way to win as well. But I'm Ron Johnson. We got Sam Ekstrom coming up on joining us on the show. And on today's show, again, we got Jordan Reid. He's going to join us for two segments. He's going to sit in the Hanging Around Johnson segment, he and I, for a little bit. Then we also got him in it says different daily 3 today. We put a spin on it. Is what's in the fridge. We asked him which quarterbacks. We gave him 3. Would you draft now? Would you wait maybe and sit to 11 or 23 and draft later? Or would you just completely say, of those 3, I don't want this one? We also asked him about defensive players. There's some good ones out there. You got Dallas Turner, you got edge rush, you got cornerbacks. So we asked him that as well. Which defensive position would you want to go after right away early if you have to? Which one would you maybe draft later in the 3rd, 4th round, maybe 23? And then which one would you say, don't touch this position right now? The Vikings are good there. But as I bring my producer to the show, Sam Ekstrom, we got to talk about the NFL. So Matthew Slater, Patriots, I'm going to pay off the tease quick. Matthew Slater, He was in town this weekend. I got a chance to meet him. I got his cell phone number. Super excited about, being able to talk to him. Funny, I'm getting a call right now I'm going to show you the name, Minnesota Vikings. I can't show it. I don't want to even. Let me see if BBC it. Yeah, I don't want to show the name, but Minnesota Vikings are calling me right now, so I have to take this call after the show's over. But when you think about what's on my mind with Matthew Slater, he came to town with the Patriots with Tony Dungy for an award. Mm-hmm. So of course I got his number, got a chance to talk to him, and he and I, CJ Ham, we're all back there in the green room talking a little bit. And he kind of brings up the fact that Kevin O'Connell, he's talked to Kevin a little bit because Kevin was there at the previous event the night before. And he kind of joked about Kevin O'Connell, talking to Jared Mayo, reaching out to him because he knows those guys from their Patriot days. And so that's what this is becoming. Like, he has a relationship with the Patriots. So he can easily create that, like, look, I don't want to screw you over. I know you don't want to screw me over. Let's help each other out. Help me help you. What do you need? What are you guys trying to do? We have a system right now and an infrastructure with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. We have an infrastructure and a defense in Brian Flores that can support a rookie quarterback. The Patriots, on the other hand, you tried it with Mac Jones. It didn't work. Nothing's changed. You don't have receivers. You don't have the guys. Like, you don't have the team that you really want to, like, contend for a Super Bowl. So with that said, why go draft another quarterback a la Mac Jones and ruin them and waste your time. Use your picks, like take our 11, take our whatever, and start to build your team back up to what it was when you had Julian Edelman and you luckily got Randy Moss. Now, here's the thing about that. Randy Moss from the Vikings. Maybe they're like, look, let's go get Justin Jefferson. We had success with Randy Moss. We didn't win the Super Bowl. We were 18-0 though. But let's go get Justin Jefferson. So I know that's been, Mike Florio. He's on Peacock and NBC, our partner. And he talked about this. Trade 11 and Justin Jefferson for 3, and maybe that's enough. And I don't know if it was Florio or somebody on the show, but they're like, that might be enough to get it done. What? If I give you Justin Jefferson and 11, all you're giving me is 3? You literally didn't even take me to dinner and you screwed me over. Like, you could at least, like with Justin Jefferson, if I get 3, I also want your 2025 first round pick, your 2026 first round pick, and maybe your 2026 third round pick or second round pick. Like, Justin Jefferson deserves a haul, just like with Matthew Stafford and the Lions. Justin Jefferson is a similar type of player where he can go with an infrastructure and set up. And so maybe the Patriots have an idea of a quarterback they want to get, or who they just get? Jacoby Brissett?
Jacoby Brissett, that's their bridge guy.
Maybe Jacoby Brissett is their guy with Justin Jefferson. I don't know if they think that's enough, but when you think about this draft, in my mind, I feel like a trade with the Patriots is almost imminent. Or maybe the Patriots are like, look, man, don't waste it. Don't waste it on us. We're not taking who you think we're taking. Who you want? Who you want? Because maybe they're friends and they're like, look, let us use this pick and we want this is what we're going to get. You can still get what you want and maybe go trade with 4 or 5. We talked about that with the Cardinals. That's what I think is going to happen. That's I truly believe now, after, I'm not going to say who I talked to, but after hearing some conversations around some people within the Vikings organization, but also some coaches and also some outside NFL people that were around, and there were a lot. I didn't realize how many it was until like David Tyree from the Giants. He was in the Giants organization talking about Daniel Jones and blah, blah. I truly believe right now where the Vikings sit, they have 3 quarterbacks that Kevin O'Connell could use. And this is why. You look at Jaron Hall. He made him pretty good. He got, what's his name? Who was the quarterback who came in and had the 2 400-yard games?
Josh Dobbs or Nick
Mullins?
With
Mullins. Nick Mullins. Yeah. He made Nick Mullins a 400-yard quarterback. He made Josh Dobbs a national sensation. Josh Dobbs has never been more famous in his life, Sam, than with Kevin O'Connell. Like, he was taking the world by storm. Everybody was talking about the Pastronaut. He's an astrophysicist. Like, they were talking about he's part of the Big Bang Theory TV show now. I mean, he had T-shirts and shields. Like, he was a national treasure for a while. So if Kevin O'Connell can do that with him, he can do that with any of the 3 that I think he likes. That's just my draft take. I think he has 3 he likes based off what I've heard. And now it's all up to what are the Vikings willing to leverage to get the 1. Because there's a 1, I think a 1B and then a 2. And so 1A, 1B, and then 2. And so based off what I was told. And so what is he willing to leverage to get those guys? And that's J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Those are my 3. I think one of those 3 quarterbacks, if they fall to the Vikings, they are just fine. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I would be stunned if the Vikings don't execute the trade up. It's all been building to that. Kevin O'Connell's more or less admitted it. All the insiders are saying the Vikings are trying to do it. The Vikings have a good relationship with Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals. They've, O'Connell's a former Patriot. They have a good relationship there. Those are easy conversations to have, I think. Like, as high as the stakes are, I'm sure it's not quite as tense when they're actually on the phone. These guys are like colleagues and friends, and I'm sure that I bet it's all worked out now. Like, I bet that there's a framework in place for these deals to get done. And if the Vikings have to give up 3 1s in exchange for number 3, that's fine. Because what's 3 minus 1, Ron? You're getting a first round pick. So really, you're only giving up 2 first round picks. You're netting giving up 2. And you get your quarterback in the future. I think that's what happens.
Yeah, well, we'll see what Jordan Reid thinks from ESPN. He's coming up next on the Hang 'em Around Johnson segment, and then he's going to stick around for the What's in the Fridge, and we'll do all that after our sponsors.
We're brought to you by FanDuel. Today, it's playoff time in the NBA. Baseball's in full swing. FanDuel's your place to bet on every game. Right now, there's some fun ones at FanDuel on tonight's Game 2 between the Timberwolves and Suns. Anthony Edwards to score 40-plus at plus 1,300. How about Anthony Edwards to record 7 threes or more? Plus 2,200. That could be a lot of fun, or you could take the traditional Wolves -3 and play the point spread. That's all available at FanDuel, and new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether you win or lose that first bet. That's $150. Bet on everything: slap shots, home runs, slam dunks. It's a safe, secure, easy-to-use app, the FanDuel Sportsbook. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic W. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Well, now it's time for the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment, and I always love this time of year. It's draft time. We're doing a ton of draft content for those coming down to US Bank Stadium tomorrow. Please make sure you realize you can come up to me and Gabe Henderson at any point in the show. I've continued to say that, but we got to get the draft numbers ready to go. We got to get the draft stock ready to go. The coaches have kind of given us the players to look into. But we want to tap into Jordan Reid at ESPN. Jordan Reid, for those that remember, he's come a long way. He's made a lot of headway. Now he's one of the staples at ESPN when it comes to the draft. Jordan Reid, I want to thank you for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show. First, man, I want to jump out there, man. How crazy is it right now for you during draft time?
It's crazy, Ron, and it's always a pleasure joining you. It seems like we've been doing this, excuse me, for such a long time now, but it's fun. And the draft is on the 25th this year. Christmas is usually on the 25th, so it's kind of like the lead up to Christmas. Now that we're in April, we're about 9 days away from the NFL draft, so I'm like a kid just waiting for Santa Claus to come. We're going to be able to unwrap some new presents here very soon. So looking forward to these 9 days going by really fast.
Yeah, my days are getting thrown off, Jordan. You're right. So this show is on a Tuesday. We will be at US Bank Stadium on a Thursday. So make sure you guys check us out then. Yeah, my days are all thrown off now. My daughter's playing high school softball and track in the same season, and she's only a 7th grader. So
wow.
Our schedule has been ridiculous right now, handling high school sports, because it's every single day. And then we still have our 9-year-old doing sports as well. She's doing track and softball as well right now. So it's a nuts schedule. And yeah, my days get thrown off. But we got the draft coming up on the 25th at US Bank Stadium for all the fans coming. Remember, anything you want to get, there might be a sneaky little Miller Lite package I might have for you, cooler or something. I'm going to give something away. But I'm Ron Johnson. This is Jordan Reid. Jordan, looking at the Minnesota Vikings, it's been a while since the Minnesota Vikings had to worry about quarterback. They've had Kirk Cousins for a while. First question I'll throw at you. People didn't like Kirk Cousins was one of the most I don't even know the word, but it was like, Romeo and Juliet's family. It was, if you're for Kirk or you're against Kirk, and it was like, we're going to all drink a pill and die on this hill. And so he was not he was the most polarizing quarterback when it came to taking his shirt off, putting on the chains. You like that, all the things. Now he's gone. And Vikings fans that didn't like him, I think they're struggling to realize it's not easy to find a quarterback. So with the Vikings looking for a quarterback right now, first, why do you think so many people kind of overlooked Kirk Cousins over his career?
Well, I think a lot of it is that you don't really appreciate something until it's gone. But also, it's different when you have a homegrown quarterback as opposed to somebody that you sign in free agency. And, I bring up guys like Teddy Bridgewater and some of these other quarterbacks that they have drafted in years past. You just feel attached at the hip to those guys just because you did draft them. But with Kirk, the Washington Commanders, they drafted him obviously in the 4th round of the 2012 draft class, and then he signed with Minnesota. So after that, it kind of was like you had to welcome Kirk Cousins, and he eventually grew on you over time. But an argument can be made of if he withstood those expectations, only having one playoff win, I believe it was 6 years. So I would say the expectations, a lot of people were expecting a little bit more just because Kirk was added as that final piece back in the Mike Zimmer days, of where the defense was absolutely phenomenal during Mike Zimmer's heyday. And Kirk was seen as that final piece to help them get over the hump. He just wasn't able to do that. So now the Vikings have an opportunity to bring in a young quarterback, depending on where they want to take him in the draft. So I think it's just a situation of where Kirk wasn't a homegrown Viking. So it was either you're on this side or this side with Kirk Cousins as far as welcoming him or just always being against him for some odd reason.
Yeah, and it's been very interesting. And now since he's gone, the people that did not like him have taken to Twitter and made everything apparent that they didn't like Kirk Cousins being here. But I do know if it doesn't work at a quarterback, because we've seen in the past the Christian Ponders, the D-Jacks, like the Freemans. There's been a number of quarterbacks that have come through, and Minnesota has absolutely hated them. And so now they're going to have to hope and pray that this draft works out. Now, we did see Sam Ekstrom talked about it last week. I forgot who did it, but somebody had a draft, like mock draft. I don't know, it was ESPN or somebody, where they had the Vikings taking 2 quarterbacks in the first round, one at 11 and one at 23. I don't know if you've seen that, but what are your thoughts on that one?
I did not see that, but I would be absolutely shocked if that's how draft day does end up turning out, just because the Vikings have a huge need at quarterback. So they're an obvious candidate to trade up, whether that's inside the top 5 or inside the top 10, wherever they feel is the landing spot is fit. So they're probably going to, or not probably, they are going to have to use both of those first round picks in order to trade up. But if they do want to stick and pick, which is very risky, just because you talk about some teams in the back end of that top 10 that do need a quarterback, and even the 2 picks consecutively behind them with the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders also needing a quarterback, I just don't know. I would be really surprised if they do stay at 11 to stick and pick, just because of the teams around them that need a quarterback. And this was the big reason why they made the trade, as far as trying to get that extra first round pick, just because now they have a much more enticing trade as far as if they want to package those picks up in order to trade up for a quarterback.
Yeah, and the person is, let me make sure, it's PFF, so I'm not going to hate on any other person to come up with that, but Sam Monson from PFF, that was his latest mock draft where he had them taking 2 quarterbacks, which is crazy. But to trade up, it sounds like it's either the Patriots or the Cardinals at 3 or 4 to get to that spot. If you were the Vikings, which one kind of suits you better at 3 or 4, or is it either way 3 or 4? I'm happy with whichever quarterback is there at 3 or 4.
Well, obviously you want to be higher up, just because you have an opportunity to potentially get somebody that's higher up on your board, just because whoever goes at 1 and 2, whether it's Williams and Daniels or Williams and May, however it does turn out, you're going to have an opportunity to potentially get one of Jaden Daniels or Drake May. And that's not to say that they don't have J.J. McCarthy as their 3rd or even 2nd-ranked quarterback. We won't know until the draft does end up unfolding. But you always want to be higher up when you're talking about getting your quarterback, just because you can secure their rights at a higher pick. So the dream landing spot for the Vikings is number 3 overall to the Patriots. But once again, they're another team that needs a quarterback. But if I was Kwesi-Adofo-Mensah, what I would try to be persuasive about to Elliott Wolf is that I would try everything in my power to say, hey, you guys are just not a great landing spot for a quarterback right now, just because of their poor offensive personnel on that side of the ball, just because they're not ready to play a young quarterback right now. But with Minnesota, they have the offensive personnel and the infrastructure in place to drop a quarterback in right now, potentially have a lot of success and get the most out of that quarterback. So if I was Kwesi, I would just try my hardest to convince Elliott Wolf to move off of that 3rd overall pick. But if not, you have a landing spot with the Arizona Cardinals at 4, or even the Chargers at 5.
Yeah, and right, the Chargers as well don't need a quarterback. People are saying the Giants also might want to take a quarterback with Daniel Jones. Again, that's another first-round quarterback that they're already pulling away from, quote unquote. Maybe it's all just throwing it out there to other teams just so they feel like, you need to come get our pick. But if that does happen and the Giants move on from Daniel Jones, does that make more, because Zach Wilson, we're seeing a lot of this happen. And honestly, we haven't seen the Panthers yet, but Bryce Young could be a bust. Does that scare off some of these GMs as well, of like taking guys that aren't quote unquote locks to be the guy?
Yeah, it's always scary when you're talking about drafting a quarterback and then you don't want to move on too early from that quarterback and he ends up flourishing somewhere else, just because that's going to make your front office and your coaches look really bad. So the Giants are in a really interesting situation with Daniel Jones, somebody that the previous regime took at number 6 overall. He has struggled with consistency, and then also durability is a huge question mark with him right now. So the question that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have to answer is, do we feel comfortable about taking one of these guys at number 6 overall and then moving off of Daniel Jones in 2025, a player that we just gave $40 million a year to, which was a significant investment. But once again, we have to win this year just because we were not very good last year. But the year prior to that, we set expectations really high with beating the Vikings in that first round playoff matchup. So it's just a situation of where they have to weigh the pros and cons of taking a quarterback in order to salvage their jobs this year, or do they just wait it out, potentially with Daniel Jones, hoping he can recapture that magic of what he showed during their first year of their regime of potentially drafting a quarterback in the following season.
And I got a grenade I'm going to pull the clip on. Justin Jefferson is not reporting to minicamp, OTAs, or anything right now. We know he's in a contract negotiation. He's going to play for $19 million, guaranteed under his tag if the Vikings don't find a long-term contract for him. Maybe it's let's draft our quarterback, and hey, Justin, then we're going to come to you right after we draft our quarterback and get these numbers set within the organization. If they can't, and there's a chance Justin's just pissed off and he's Stephon Diggs the bit, and he's like, look, I'll do this, but you're not getting anything extra out of me if you're not going to pay me. Do you see the Vikings maybe potentially at 11 going to get, because one of these receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. won't be there, but Malik Neighbors could be there. Romeo Duze could be there. Could you see the Vikings taking a receiver with that 11th pick?
I wouldn't, just because with Justin, you already know he's a known commodity. We know he's an elite blue chip type of talent, a player that I think has a potential to be wearing a gold jacket one day. Now, you're just hoping and wishing that one of these wide receivers can eventually turn into what you already know Justin is. So That's why I wouldn't be an advocate of drafting a wide receiver at 11, just because you already know what you have in Justin Jefferson, who I think is the best wide receiver in the NFL. That's not to say that Romeo Dunze or Malik Neighbors can eventually turn into that, but I already know going into the season that Justin is going to be that for my rookie quarterback. So there's not a deal that I can think of that any team could offer me in the league that would make me move off of Justin Jefferson. I just think he's that type of talent, and he deserves to get $30+ million or whatever it is that he's asking for to reset the market.
And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. When you look at this draft, though, as well with the Vikings, they have Justin Jefferson. They have KJ Osborne. Or sorry, KJ Osborne's gone. They have why am I drawing a blank on his name already? Jordan Addison. But KJ Osborne moves on to the Patriots. If they were to find a late round receiver, is there any late round 4th, 5th, 6th round receivers? Because that's where KJ Osborne kind of was. He was a later round receiver that can come in and give them KJ Osborne production. We know Brandon Powell's coming back. But do you see there a receiver later on? Because Keon Coleman, I liked him out of Michigan State. He ended up transferring to Florida State. Didn't do much at Michigan State, though, because all my Detroit guys hated him at Michigan State. And then all of a sudden he goes to Florida State and kills it. And so when you think about Keon Coleman, probably could be there, but probably won't be there in the later rounds. But you never know with the draft. I mean, he's the 49th overall rated prospect. He's the 9th or 10th rated receiver. And so again, as I was the 9th rated receiver and I went in the 4th. So there's always a chance you can drop down there. Is there another guy other than Keon Coleman that you can see fall in the late rounds to the Vikings?
Yeah, there's two guys that I think they're going to take a liking to. And the first one is Malik Washington of Virginia. He actually started his career, the first 4 years of his career at Northwestern. And the quarterback play obviously wasn't great at Northwestern, but he transfers over to Virginia, and he was absolutely terrific, over 1,000 yards. And he had career highs in touchdowns and receptions as well. But what I think was the differentiator for him last year than what we saw previously in his career is that he had 33 forced missed tackles last season, which was one of the top ranks in the country. So he's a natural tackle breaker, even though he is a little bit undersized at 5'9", about 190 pounds. He's somebody that has that Brandon Powell type of body, but I just think he has much more upside than what Powell has shown so far in his career. So if you're looking for somebody that can come in and be an immediate wide receiver 3, Malik Washington of Virginia is one name to keep an eye on that could go in that 4th round range. And then another is Jaquan Jackson out of Tulane, somebody that I didn't know a whole lot about coming into the year, but as I'm studying Michael Pratt, who's a quarterback at Tulane, that's really has some intriguing tools as a later round guy. Jaquan Jackson was one name that really continued to stick out. And he's another that's a little bit undersized, but at the Senior Bowl, I thought he was absolutely terrific. He just has a knack for getting open. He's a really good route runner. He's very sudden, and he has really good hands too. So Jaquan Jackson is another day 3 name to keep an eye on.
And when you look at, and again, I'm a Big Ten guy. I'm very biased with the Big Ten. I cover the Gophers, and so I see all these Big Ten games. Roman Wilson. Now, Michigan, everybody knows if you put the 1 on Braylon Edwards, Anthony Carter, you're the guy. David Terrell back in my era. When you think about Roman Wilson wore the number 1, JJ McCarthy is another reason why I see a ton of Roman Wilson. Could you see Roman Wilson also being a guy where he's a plug and play guy? He was in an NFL style offense. He made the go up and get on plays when JJ McCarthy gave him a chance in the back of the end zone. And he could fit what Kevin O'Connell wants. Not going to be a true burner, I guess you'd say. He's not like a Malik Washington, but he is 6 feet and kind of fits that KJ Osborne style of play. What do you think about Roman Wilson out of Michigan?
Yeah, I just think he's going to be out of range for them. Not having a day 2 pick, I would be surprised if he gets out of that day 2 spot, just because he's one person that's really helped himself throughout the pre-draft process. He was unguardable at the Senior Bowl, and it's just been really intriguing to see how his draft prospectus has unfolded, just because he was in that Michigan offense that is run heavy. So we weren't really able to see the totality as far as who he could be as a prospect on the next level. But at the Senior Bowl, now him getting more reps, seeing him in 7-on-7, those one-on-ones, those different situations of where he's able to be in, he was really able to expose exactly who he could be on the next level. So if I had to guess right now, I would be really surprised if he got outside the top 75. I think he could go as high as the second round.
And with the Minnesota Vikings too, kind of leveraging their picks to get up to that 23 spot. They don't have a lot of additional picks now. What are some ways, I don't know if it's leveraging the future maybe to move up in this draft to get a second or third round pick, but how do the Vikings maneuver because there's so much talent that has come out of the second round. Even for the Vikings, you think about Brian O'Neill, you think about Dalvin Cook. There's a lot of talent in that second round. I mean, even for the Buccaneers, you got a guy like Antoine Winfield, you got T. Higgins out of with the Bengals. How could the Vikings potentially, whether it's they get their quarterback and they use 23 and go backwards, they package up and go, and then they take more package to go to second round and they make it a short draft because they kind of feel like they have their numbers and they're going to go into free agency. But how do they try to maybe get in the second round?
So I think best case scenario for the Vikings, and not saying this is going to happen, but I think this would be an absolute home run for them, is that they're sitting at 11 and the quarterback that they like is slipping, whether it's Drake May, JJ McCarthy, or whoever, and they only have to trade up to 8 to Atlanta. I would earmark that as a spot to where they wouldn't have to give up that 23rd overall pick. Maybe they give up 11 and potentially 2 day 3 picks, whether it's the 4th round or the 6th round or whatever it may be, or even a future pick as far as that 3rd draft pick that they would have to give up. Now things become really interesting at 23, just because you could take best player available on the board. But if I were Kwesi, I would look to trade back, just because now you're able to accumulate some more day 2 draft capital. So I have my quarterback at number 8 overall. Let's just hypothetically speak that I exchange draft picks with Atlanta at number 8 overall. I'll only give up a 4th rounder and maybe a day 3 pick in next year's draft. Now at 23, I can trade back maybe into the back end of the 1st round, or even potentially the beginning parts of day 2. Now I have an extra 2nd round pick and maybe another 3rd round pick or something like that.
And I like that because that creates a natural let's wait and see, because the Buffalo Bills and the Vikings created one. When you look at Stephon Diggs goes to the Bills, the Vikings get Justin Jefferson with that pick, and everybody was watching those two for the last couple of years. Everybody feels like the Vikings won when you look at what Stephon Diggs has done as far as wanting to move on, getting into it with his coaches, with his quarterback. And that could create another one where the Atlanta Falcons take Kirk Cousins from them in free agency, but then the Vikings take their pick and then go get a quarterback. And then again, it's going to be kind of a natural, well, let's see what the Vikings do with the pick the Falcons could have had if they didn't pay $180 million for Kirk Cousins. So I love the storyline because that does create more. I mean, that's what Minnesotans, we're petty here. Like, there's a lot of petty fans that love to keep up with petty stuff like that. And that would be a perfect storyline for the next Netflix special that Peyton Manning wants to put together, because I could just see it naturally playing out that way. And again, I think that is a dream scenario for Kwesi, because Kevin O'Connell clearly, as we all know, has 3 quarterbacks he really likes. Josh McCown, who was my guy when we came out together, we were, in the Hay rookie year in the NFL deal with the rookie premier. And so I've been texting Josh McCown since he's moved, before he moved to Minnesota, but since he's moved to Minnesota, I've kind of stayed in touch with him now even more. And so I kind of have his idea of what he wants from a quarterback as well. So it's kind of cool to see this unfold. I'm not Adam Schefter, by the way, people. So, because I get a lot of people saying, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, I am not that guy. I'm not, like, the coaches can trust me, and that's why I'm allowed to go in the building. That's why I'm allowed to be in the draft, like, back room and all that stuff, because I'm not breaking news. Like, so I do know who they like. We'll see what happens if it falls. I hope that the quarterback they want, they get, because it makes Justin Jefferson happy. And I think that's what everybody's worried about. When you look at this Justin Jefferson situation, though, draft a quarterback, how much emphasis and how quick do you think the Vikings need to make Justin Jefferson happy and find something, whether it's a huge signing bonus with maybe like a promise of like, hey, man, we'll give you X, Y, and Z, and then we're going to renegotiate or whatever, but they have to find a way to get this deal done. How imperative is it to get that deal done before they go into training camp?
Well, I think it's paramount, just because when you're talking about developing and grooming a young quarterback, you want to make sure he has as much rapport and then also chemistry with your star receiver. You don't want a situation of where he's missing time, he's missing OTAs, he's missing minicamp, and then also training camp. And then you just don't want that drama lingering, just because you want to be able to develop your young rookie quarterback. And then what better way to have that security blanket like a Justin Jefferson while he is developing in practice, getting those reps, understanding the body positions, the body movements, the routes, how he run routes. There's so many different ways to develop chemistry. So it's best that they make Justin Jefferson happy, just because it's only going to expedite the development of your young rookie quarterback.
When you're walking around the halls of ESPN or you're in your text threads with Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, what's some of the Vikings draft rumors that people keep thinking are going to happen?
The Vikings moving up. I mean, that's the worst kept secret out there right now. They've identified some guys that they do like, and that's what Kwesi talked about in his press conference a few days ago, of where they have identified some guys on the draft board that they feel as if are franchise type of quarterbacks. Now, what I'm interested to see is how far are they willing to go and what type of draft capital are they willing to give up in order to move up. And I think that spot at 3 to New England, I think that's one that they could circle as a potential landing spot, but just how much is it going to take to get up there? And do New England do they want to trade back, especially if the quarterback that they want is already gone off of the board? So it's best for the Vikings to cheer whoever the top 2 quarterbacks are. The Patriots on their board is gone, just because now things would get really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. And before we get to there, we got to take a quick trip around the NFC North. Chicago Bears are probably going to take Caleb Williams. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think people kind of are like looking at the red flags like, I don't think they should do it?
No, I think Caleb's a transcendent type of talent. I think he's going to be really special on the next level. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they're going to have to see him twice a year, but the NFC North has gotten really special overnight. It seems like Detroit, they've overturned that roster in the matter of 3 years. Green Bay has gotten better with the young core that they have in place winning a playoff game. And now Chicago seems to be getting things on the right track with potentially getting the franchise quarterback. So the Vikings, they have some work to do as far as finding a franchise quarterback. I think they'll be better on defense next year with Brian Flores in year 2. They have some work to do as far as finding some pieces up front, specifically at guard along the offensive line. But Minnesota has a really good core offensively in place. They had a really good defensive free agency, some really good additions on that side of the ball. They have some young players that still need to step up. But finding a quarterback, is going to make or break them over the next year or 2.
And with the Detroit Lions, my hometown team, it looks like they have all the pieces they need. So at 29, do you see them trading up to maybe getting a quarterback, because we don't know how much longer they're going to want to keep Jared Goff?
I would be surprised. They seem to like Jared Goff a lot. And then you have to remember Brad Holmes was a part of the Rams when Jared Goff was drafted to the then St. Louis Rams at the time, which is one of the biggest reasons why he was so adamant about trading for Jared Goff once he took over in Detroit. So I'll be really surprised if they took a quarterback. I think they need some help along the offensive line. They still need another edge rusher, and then they still need some help in the secondary too.
Yeah, and whoever they get in the offensive line, I hope they know how to report properly to the referees, because we don't need any more of that. Because I had Lomas Brown on, and Lomas Brown talked about that moment, because I love to get the person in that moment when something like that happens that transcends across all sports. And we had Lomas Brown on. Lomas Brown actually lived down the street from my dad in Detroit. And so Lomas, I grew up knowing Lomas. And so Lomas comes on, and he's like, as an announcer even, he was even confused because he saw it happening. He had heard about it was going to happen, but he agreed the Lions might have gotten too tricky with trying to send all the linemen at the referee. If they had not tried to trick the other team and just do it the way they do it, have the one guy report, it probably would have went their way, but it didn't matter anyway. They ended up still having to, go to the playoffs. They still got a chance to play the 49ers, and they couldn't get it done. But maybe one day the Lions will break the curse. And then when you think about the Packers, Aaron Jones, he kind of comes over to the Vikings from the Packers. He's not happy. Devondre Campbell leaves the Packers. He's not happy the way the Packers did him. What's going on with the Packers? Aaron Rodgers, when he left, he kind of had a sentiment the same, like the front office is just not talking to me and telling me what I need to hear. What's going on with the Packers front office, and how do they correct this for the current players?
I think it's going to be really interesting, but they do have a young core in place that I think they do like a lot. They welcome some young receivers on day 2 and day 3 of the draft that's really grown with Jordan Love, but they do have some things to figure out as far as from a front office standpoint of where they do need to get corrected. But I think this is going to get better over time. They have some expensive players coming up with that they have already got rid of, I should say. David Bakhtiari being one. They released him about a month ago. So now you're seeing that young core really start to take over.
And with Dalvin Cook, the Vikings already got Aaron Jones. They already have Ty Chandler. It sounds like all signs are pointing to drafting a day 3 or day 2 running back. There's a lot of names out there. Bucky Irvin, I like him out of Minnesota. He went to Oregon. He's a scat back guy. I think caught 56 passes. I liked him at Minnesota. He was one of the best, but he left because of all the 5th, 6th, and 7th-year running backs that came back to Minnesota. But I like him. I like the kid from Wisconsin, Braylon Allen. I don't know if he'll even be there when the Vikings are drafting later, but it doesn't seem like running backs are a premium right now. But for the Packers, when you think about what they need to add, and you mentioned that, like they have some holes to fill, where do you think they start? Because they do have their quarterback. They do have the receivers. Is it offense, or should they look at defense as well? Because, they lost Devondre Campbell, and they had a lot of issues down the stretch with their defense.
I think offensive line is one area that they do have to address, and they do have some young pieces up front that they do like. Zach Tom was a player that they found on day 3 that's turned out to be a really good player. Elton Jenkins, who I think is one of the best interior blockers in the NFL already. So they do need some help along the interior and then also at offensive tackle too as well. So at 25, they're going to have a lot of options just because this is such a deep offensive line class overall. So I'll be really surprised if it's not offensive line.
Well, that'll do it for us on the Hang Around Johnson segment. Coming up, me and Jordan are going to hang out with Sam Ekstrom and do a little What's in the Fridge really quick. But we'll do that after a word from our sponsors.
We're brought to you today by Monopoly Go. I'm told that I'm competitive. My wife thinks I'm too competitive. I'm always trying to play games. I'm always trying to create competitions. Well, that's why Monopoly Go is perfect for me and for 150 million others that have downloaded it. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is messing with your friends, though. You can charge them rent on the iconic properties. You can heist their vaults and keep the riches for yourself. And the leaderboards show you who is the top tycoon. So the competitive side, it's great. You team up with friends. You earn huge rewards. So get in the game. Play with your buddies. Download Monopoly Go free at the App Store and Google Play.
And now it's time for a little What's in the Fridge. For those that remember, it's an old game, but we're bringing it back. We want to eat one, keep one, and throw one away. So we'll see what Jordan Love wants to do. And this is going to be the NFL Draft Vikings edition. So Sam, take it away.
All right. Jordan Reid, I've got 3 quarterbacks for you from the first round. They've all been linked to the Vikings, the big 3. It's Drake May, it's J.J. McCarthy, it's Jaden Daniels. So I guess like eating one in the What's in the Fridge game, that'd be like trading up. Like we're going to trade up, we're going to open the fridge, we're going to eat this guy because we love him. Then setting him aside, eating him later, that's probably staying put at number 11. And then throwing away, maybe that's a crass way to put it, but who are they ignoring in that first round? So of those 3, how would you play your What's in the Fridge cards?
So the one that I would be aggressive with trading up to get would be Drake May, just because I think he fits exactly what they want to do a little bit more in KOC's system. And then you factor in Josh McCown, who's coached him going back to their days at high school together. And I'll just say this, if Drake May is able to land in Minnesota, I think he has the potential to be one of the better quarterbacks overall from this draft class. So he would be the one that I would trade up for. The second one would be Jaden Daniels. He would be the one that I would be fine with sticking and picking. And then the one that I would throw away in this scenario would be J.J. McCarthy.
And if you did, one question I want to throw at you, though, if you did have to get, not have to, if J.J. McCarthy is your guy, would you be okay with taking him at 11, or do you think he is a trade up guy that they're going to have to trade up if they want him?
So I think they're going to have to trade up to get him, but I will be fine with taking him at 11 just because I think the Vikings infrastructure is so good and what they have in place with Sam Darnold, they wouldn't be forced to play him right away just because I don't think JJ is going to be ready right away. But with the infrastructure and the ecosystem that they have in place, from play callers to protection, and then also the playmakers, I think JJ McCarthy would be entering a really good situation.
And if they did get JJ McCarthy, do you think it's at 8, or do you think they have to go higher than 8 to get him?
It's tough to say right now. There's so many different rumors. It really just depends on who you ask. But if they do want JJ, I think they're going to have to get ahead of the Giants, who potentially could take a quarterback at 6. So you're talking about 5 will be the floor of where he ends up going.
Okay. Well, for me, I have a similar one. Like after talking to Josh McCown, Drake May would be, and I watched him with the Gophers North Carolina game. Like I covered that game. I studied it. I watched it over and over and over again. We covered it with PJ Fleck. And the one thing about Drake May is he's patient. That's what PJ Fleck said. He's patient. He's willing to take a little bit longer to find that one progression. He's waiting to come open. In the NFL, it's not going to be as much time as it was in college, but he's patient. And I think that's hard to find sometimes in quarterbacks. But he also can run. Like he can move faster than people gave him credit for, as we noticed against the Gophers. And maybe the Gophers defensive line and linebackers are just slow. I don't know. One of the two didn't work out for us. But when you think about that, I would say Drake May. I would go up and get him. JJ McCarthy would be my one that I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with getting where he's at. If not going to 8. And then Jaden Daniels. And the only reason is because LSU. I don't know. I just have not. Like, I just wonder, was LSU a system thing? Because Joe Burrow came from Ohio State, couldn't beat out any of the guys that he's way better than. Then gets to LSU, and then all of a sudden they created a monster, and now he's one of the best quarterbacks. I just don't know if I feel like Jaden Daniels was the same, or was it system? And so that's what I always worry about. But, I think all three are good guys. But we'll see what happens. Sam, what's the next one?
All right, these are defensive prospects. So this is probably like sitting at 11 or sitting at 23. How would you view Byron Murphy II, Dallas Turner, and Terrion Arnold? You got 3 different positions there, all arguably areas of need for the Vikings. Jordan, take it away.
So Byron Murphy would be my first choice in this one. And apologies to Paul Allen. It would be tough having 2 Byron Murphys on the team. That would be a blast to call for him. But when you're talking about the biggest need for the Vikings on defense, it's without question interior defensive line. They don't have that game record in the middle. So he would be the one that I would be aggressive in going up to get. If I had to stick and pick, this is tough. I would go with Dallas Turner. Just because I think he's the best defensive player in this draft class. And the Vikings have done a really good job of addressing their edge need in free agency. But we all know you can never have too many guys that come off the edge to rush the passer. And then the one I would throw away, even though it would be really tough, would be Terrion Arnold, just because I think the Vikings have some young guys that they want to develop this year. I think Byron Murphy, he was a little bit inconsistent last year, but I think there's something there with him. But Mekhi Blackman is one I think is going to take a big step this year.
And if Terrion Arnold isn't the guy they go get, I mean, there's Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's not going to probably be there either. Is there any late round cornerbacks that you could see coming in as well and being a piece of this Vikings defense? Because again, with Brian Flores, it looks like he carries a lot of defensive backs in his defense. Is there a guy that you saw that you're like, oh, that could be a corner that ends up in Minnesota?
Yeah, there's one. We probably go in the 4th round. His name was Elijah Jones out of Boston College. Very productive as far as getting his hands on the ball, really athletic. He tested really well, too. And he's a player that's been really underrated during this pre-draft process. I'm surprised that I haven't heard a little bit more buzz about him. So Elijah Jones of Boston College, he's one name to definitely keep an eye on.
I like that. All right. So for me, this one's tough for me. But the fact that because Gabe Henderson was on, and he talked about the capital they already kind of put into the edge. So I'm going to move Dallas Turner out of that one. I'm going to go with Byron Murphy as well first, for the simple fact of they haven't had an interior like beast in a while. And he seems like to be the guy. You go with BM2, and then you have BMJ. And that's Byron Murphy Jr. and Byron Murphy II. So you gotta decipher the 2 names. And then some people in the stadium are going to have, Murphy the second jerseys and Murphy Jr. jerseys. It is what it is. But BMJ and then BM2. I would go with Byron Murphy, and then I would go with Terrion Arnold. And the only reason I say that is because Brian Flores, and I got a chance to finally meet him last year, and we had a quick chat, as I'm heading in the studio to do my deal, and we were just talking about offense and what his plans are to stop an offense. And he kind of talked about getting in the mindset of an offensive coordinator. Most offensive coordinators now, we know, are trying to throw the ball. And so having 3 cornerbacks that are all solid, I think we noticed last year for the Vikings, that was the mistake in a lot of games. When you think about the Denver Broncos game, there's no way they should have lost that game. You think about some of those other ones. That's what they need. The Packers, that's what they need, because you look at Romeo Doubs and you look at the other receivers they have. You look at the Lions, and they're spreading it out a little bit now, and they have a tight end. I think you got to find another corner to go with Byron Murphy. I think Malik Blackman is good. I like Caleb Williams as well, Caleb Williams. But that's his name, right, Sam? Caleb Williams?
Yes.
Why
Caleb
does it sound
Evans.
Weird? Caleb Evans.
I'm sorry.
Weird.
Yeah, that did sound weird, but I
was like, why does it
couldn't
sound
bring it
weird?
to mind either.
Caleb Evans, though. But, they had, and I've liked the Caleb Evans when they drafted him. I said that. I stood on that a while ago, and he became the starter eventually. But they need another corner. I truly believe the way Flores likes to use additional rushers, he keeps 6 DBs in the games sometimes. I think a corner has to be, I would take that next. And then the only reason I would say Dallas Turner would be the one I would move on is because you've gotten Grenard and you brought in Blake Cashman as well as Van Ginkel. So you kind of spent a lot of money on that position. I can't see them wanting to draft that high, but hey, George's right. You never can have enough pass rushers. Because I remember when we had Pete Boware, forgot the other guy, and then we drafted Terrell Suggs. Oh, Mike McCrary. And everybody's like, we drafted Suggs. Why? And then everybody's like, this is why. You get additional rushers. You put them on that edge. You put them in different spots. And that's why Sizzle became an outside linebacker versus a true DN because they just needed another rusher out there. And then, other guys moved on. Bart Scott became a guy. But yeah. You get an additional pass rusher, you make it hell for these quarterbacks in the NFC North, especially Caleb Williams, because that's the guy we got to go after. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Jordan Reid. That's Sam Extra. I want to thank you guys for joining us today on the Ron Johnson Show. The draft is coming. It's coming, people. It's not going away, but you can find us on the YouTube channel. We're going to be diving into this draft as every pick comes. We're going to break down the picks later that night. We're going to talk to some fans. We're going to have some fun at the draft party. But I'm Ron Johnson. Again, make sure you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe for all the everydayers. We thank you for continuing to like, download, share, and tell a friend that we're here. Appreciate you guys, and have a great one.